Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today I have a viewer requested comparison between the Cold Steel Recon 1 and the Cold Steel American Lawman. Both of these are knives that I absolutely love and highly recommend. And they're also knives that are quite a bit different. Now that was noted by the viewer who made this request. And he said, I know they're very different and that's probably why you haven't had a video comparing them. And that's true. However, I do think this will be a lot of fun and it'll be a worthwhile discussion. And what I would love to have from you guys is for you to weigh in on the various points that I'm going to bring up. So if that means you make more than one comment, that's great. Because there are lots of places between these two knives where there's some kind of trade-off being made and you sort of have to pick which option or which benefit you prefer versus which compromise you're willing to make. Okay, so I'd love to hear you guys weigh in down below with your thought process on which one of these knives appeals to you most in various areas and why that is. And if you want to have a bit of a debate about that down in the comments, that's great. The other thing I want to say by way of introduction is price point on these is going to be fairly similar. If you're going to buy one, it would help the channel if you went to White Mountain Knives and used the discount code SHARPSTUFF. You'll get 10% off and I'll get credit for a sale, which will hopefully mean that White Mountain Knives will say, hey, Kevin's a great guy. We should send him stuff to review because people watch his videos and then come buy stuff from us. So that's that's my plug for White Mountain Knives. I priced these this morning on Blade HQ. This one was $95. This one was $100. I mean, $94.95 or something and $99.99. So basically $95 and $100. So $5 to me is not a significant difference, certainly not worth making your buying decision on purely money. Okay, so that kind of gets all that stuff out of the way. Now let's get into our actual comparison, beginning with size and weight, just like if we were doing a review. This is the way I normally run these comparisons. So let's go ahead and work our way through this. So we have the American Lawman coming in at 8 and a little under 3/8, about 5/16 inches overall. Blade length here is going to be 3 3/8, handle length 4 13/16. It's nice and slim at 3/8 of an inch thick, and it weighs in at 3.9 ounces. The the Recon 1, unless you're completely blind, you can see is quite a bit bigger at 9 1/4 inches, so almost a full inch larger. 3.78 inch blade. Okay, so almost 4 inches of blade there. 5 7/16 on the handle. It is half an inch thick, so considerably thicker, I guess 1/8 of an inch thicker than the Lawman, and 5.2 ounces. Now, by the way, some of these things will be a little bit different depending on model. The original or the older AUS 8A version of the Lawman was sort of the same width in the handle and the same heavy texturing as the Recon 1. So that will be a notable difference. And that's going to be one of the things that comes up. There are a number of variants of these two knives out there. So I'm going to do my best to acknowledge all of those. I'm guaranteed to miss one. Okay, so bear with me on that. And again, if you're making comments, say, hey, I like the American Lawman in this steel or this blade grind or whatever for this reason. Okay, that's a welcome addition to the video. So size and weight, obviously the Recon 1 is much bigger, and so there's a very easy deciding process here. If you like smaller knives, you're going to like the Lawman better. If you like larger knives, you're going to like the Recon 1 better. However, there are other considerations that you may want to make. Maybe you want the extra blade length. Maybe you want the extra handle size because you have really large hands, although the Lawman does provide a decent amount of real estate there, especially with the option to choke up. Maybe you want that extra width because of the comfort it provides if you do a lot of hard cutting tasks. So there are lots of reasons that you may want a larger knife over a smaller knife, other than just the fact that it's larger, okay? Now, yes, you will have to carry some extra weight. So it's pretty obvious which one is going to be easier in pocket, and that's going to be the Lawman. And again, the difference will be, your own preferences. And so I'd love to hear where you lean. Honestly, guys, I carry both of these quite a bit. I don't find, I have a Curtis F3 that I carry all the time. So it's like 6.5 ounces. 5 ounces does not bother me. So to me, I don't even notice the size difference between these two when they're in my pocket, which is what our primary discussion is on size and weight. I do notice the difference more when it comes to obviously the blade and the handle, and those things we'll talk about sort of as we move through the rest of our discussion. And let's do that now, beginning with the blade. Now, first thing I have to point out is on most of the standard versions, okay, these are both going to have a hollow grind. On my particular versions, we have a hollow grind on the Lawman and a flat grind on the Recon 1, and there are other variations of that. I've heard of Recon 1s with a flat grind. I've heard of American Lawmans with a flat grind instead of a hollow. And of course, there are other blade shapes as well available in the Recon 1. So bear all of that in mind, all right? The biggest difference between these two is, of course, going to be the blade length itself. If you're doing a lot of cutting that requires a big long blade, then guess what? You know, the Recon 1 is going to be the way to go. You're only dealing with about 3 inches of blade length on the Lawman, and if that isn't enough for you, that's going to be a big deciding factor. If, however, you go, yeah, 3 inches is plenty of blade length, then you're going to probably love the American Lawman. Both of these are the same blade stock, okay, 133 thousandths. However, there's quite a bit of difference in edge geometry. The Recon 1, now this one is a flat grind, okay, so it's designed to be a little bit tougher. And if you're really hard on a knife and do a lot of hard use tasks, you know, this is a great option because S35VN with a flat grind is going to be a pretty reasonably durable steel. CTS XHP with a hollow grind, you know, yeah, it's possible that this could break out a little bit easier. There's just very little steel back here. So this is 21 thousandths behind the edge. This is 30 thousandths behind the edge. And then there's more steel all the way through the grind because it's a flat grind rather than a hollow grind. So that's really something you're going to have to decide for yourself. I find, okay, and here's my, what would you say? Between these two knives, I just slightly, okay, prefer the American Lawman because of the hollow grind. I love hollow grinds, and the way this is ground, it still carries a lot of material out to the tip. Well, the way this is ground, it actually gets pretty thin at the tip, meaning, you know, the chances of breaking the tip off on the Lawman are probably less than on the Recon 1. Now, let me say this about this whole discussion. I don't pry with my knives. I don't do things that are going to break the tip off my knives because I know, just look at it. You've got just that little teeny bit of metal down there. All right, so if I'm going to pry on something, I use a pry bar. To each his own, and if you're going to pry with your knife, you know, then just be aware that you might break it. And as long as that's a risk you're happy to take, then go nuts. And in terms of which are going to hold up to that lateral force better, well, in this case, especially because of the flat grind, it's going to be the Recon 1. All right, so I don't know which blade you're going to prefer. Remember that a lot of Recon 1s are going to have a hollow grind rather than a flat grind. And both of these knives are, I think, moving forward for, I don't know if it's switched this year, 2018, or whether it starts to switch next year, 2019, but both of these knives are going to ultimately be in S35VN, even though right now they're CTS XHP and S35VN. Also, you may find older ones that are in AUS 8. So there's a lot of consideration there and a lot of variability in the blade comparison. Lockup and deployment. I think I'm going to skip this one, guys. Both of these have triad locks, which are going to be stupidly strong, and they're not going to flick open real easily, okay? I mean, that's just the nature of cold steel knives. I can flick both of these blades open just fine. I don't know if I'll be able to do it on camera because I have to kind of try not to hit the tripod. Well, I kind of rolled it open more. Let's see if I can do this one. No. Okay, so when I'm not on camera, I can flick both of these knives open just fine. And cold steels, you know, the only limitation I see is that both of these I've had problems with. Sometimes gunk can get right down in here. I'll show you. Okay, there's the cutout in the blade for the triad lock, the tooth of the lock to fall into. And you can already see there's debris in here from a pocket. Well, if you get enough of that debris in there, when you close the knife, you'll get some movement, okay? This one, you know, it's solid as a rock right now, but over time, I know it will develop a little bit of blade play from gunk being down in there, and it's just a matter of cleaning it out. And that's a weakness to many, many cold steels. Not that the lock will fail, but that it'll just have a little bit of play because it can't seat fully because there's some, pocket lint blocking it up. Both of those are going to struggle with that in basically the same degree. Now, where there's, again, a little more difference, in fact, quite a bit of difference, is the handle. And probably the handle on these two are going to be a deciding factor for many of you. The American Lawman is 3/8 of an inch thick. It has softer, the G10, the texturing is almost like a paramilitary. It also has a choil. So we have the ability to, down here in sort of a standard saber grip, you can choke up, okay, and get your thumb back here. It does have lots of real estate for your thumb, which is really appreciated. Now, some of you are going to really, really prefer that style. On the Recon 1, you are further back, but you can also still choke up for doing finer detailed work. The biggest difference, now I guess two big differences, is the Recon 1 is a little more comfortable in hand, mostly because it's thicker, okay? Think of a broom handle. Broom handle is very, very comfortable in hand versus a ruler, which isn't. Well, that's, one is super thin and sort of flat. Well, the Recon 1 is kind of thin and flat, okay? So if I know going into a situation that I'm going to be doing a ton of cutting, right, that I'm going to have to really put some pressure on this blade for a long period of time in repeated motions, I'm going to be doing a lot of cutting over and over again, same type of thing, I'm going to lean toward the Recon 1 because the ergonomics are a little better. It's going to be more comfortable. It's not going to wear my hand out as quickly. The American Lawman is not as comfortable. When you really have to bear down on it, the thinness becomes much more noticeable. Now, as an EDC knife, day-to-day tasks, if I'm opening envelopes or cutting up some cardboard or even, doing a little bit of wood carving to start a fire or something, that's not enough cutting for me to be that concerned about, those ergonomics. It's only in those situations where I go, man, I've got like 100 boxes to cut up. I'm going to favor the Recon 1 in that case. All right. Or if the boxes are really thick. When my kids, my oldest son's birthday, he wanted to do Fortnite in real life. So I got like 15 refrigerator boxes for them to build forts out of, which was awesome. And they had a lot of fun. But cutting up those refrigerator boxes, they're double walled, glue together cardboard. You want a knife that's pretty comfortable. You want a knife that you can really bear down on and get a lot of work done. So that definitely makes a big difference. The other big difference here is if you do something that requires a lot of reach, the distance between your knuckle here and the tip of the blade is going to be about 5 inches on the Recon 1. Well, it's going to be about 4 inches on the American Lawman. All right, and that may be something you care about as well, especially in sort of a defensive type of situation. You may want that extra reach. And that's where I would say that's one of the primary differences in philosophy between these two. The Recon 1 is, definitely on the tactical end of the spectrum. It's designed to have the ability to function as a fighting knife if it needs to. And so it's very grippy, very aggressive G10, big deep finger choils here, designed to really grip onto your hand. And the American Lawman, well, it's very strong, very confidence inspiring in hand and would work just fine in a defensive situation as well. It's not purposefully designed for it to quite the same extent as the Recon 1, even though it is called the American Lawman, which presumably means it's designed for police, that kind of thing. Anyway, the American Lawman is going to be more of an EDC friendly knife. All right, and that's where now I want to bring up some of those differences. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of these two knives? Well, both of them have a lot going for them. Both are reasonably priced. Both are in good steel. Both have a very strong lock. Both are fairly lightweight for what you get. I have the Recon 1 because I like hard use knives and I have a lot of them on the channel. And I repeatedly bring in the Recon 1 when I'm comparing to all kinds of heavy duty titanium frame locks, because my point in doing that is, look, you can spend $500 on this titanium frame lock that's built like a tank, or you can spend $100 on a Recon 1 and get a knife that's just as tough and will do all the same stuff, okay? The same is true of the American Lawman, right? it's very lightweight, it's budget priced, it's easy to carry. And again, compared to many knives in similar size that are made of, anything that has stainless steel liners, stainless steel frame locks, titanium frame locks, the American Lawman is often going to be lighter for its size. All right, now let's talk about some of the differences, the way they stand out from one another. Well, the American Lawman is obviously smaller in pocket, okay? It takes up less space, it's less noticeable, it goes into your pocket more easily if you've got other stuff in there, it fits in more pants because, this being 5.5 inches deep, some pants I own, I can't even fit the whole American Lawman into the pant pocket. The Recon 1 into the pant pocket. So the American Lawman is going to carry a little lighter. In the case of this particular one, it's going to slice a little better, although I wouldn't be able to say that if this was a hollow ground Recon 1, but it is going to have less edge. On the plus and minus side of the Recon 1, the advantages are, hey, you've got a big blade, a ton of cutting edge. You've got a large, extremely comfortable handle that's also extremely grippy. This is a knife where if you could somehow, stab it into the ceiling of your house, you could hang off this no problem. It's just really, really grippy, and it's not going to let go. It's one of those knives where when you grab it, it kind of grabs you back. All right, so very grippy, a little bit tougher blade in this case. Now that's also going to be true of this knife over many Recon 1s, okay? The flat grind is going to give you a little bit of an advantage. And my experience is, and I've done a lot of cutting with this, it still slices like a dream. It is razor sharp and will cut through, apples or carrots or whatever, hard brittle material you want to cut through, it'll slice it like crazy. So to me, the extra strength is very much appreciated, even though I do like the slightly less effort required by the hollow grind on the Recon 1. And I mean on the American Lawman. And I like the Recon 1 with a hollow grind as well. Okay, so those are kind of the differences between these two. I would love to hear you guys down in the comments below kind of hash out which you prefer and why. I guess the other big factor that I haven't brought up yet is if you're in public. Okay, if you're going to open this up at McDonald's, I always use this example, so let's go with it. If you're going to open this up at McDonald's to cut your kids' chicken nuggets into bite-sized pieces, now both of my kids don't want that. They're fine to do it on their own. But when I used to have to do it, this is a knife that's not going to get as many looks in a McDonald's as this one is. You pull this out and start cutting up your food, people are going to be like, oh my goodness, that's a big knife. Where this one, they're not even going to give it a second thought. So there is that last one point. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.